He's da.
Beware of the dog? You don't have a dog. Are you trying to scare people?
Scare me.
Like you, be strong to hold the powers of the sun.
I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
Listen to Pavarotti.
Can I be your superhero?
Hello, welcome to The Revealing. I'm your host, Pavarotti, and I'm here to discuss the Idaho 4 case. Now, as you know, I have been diving in deep to the vague and undisclosed expert testimony. Well, I mean, you would know if you've seen the video that I did yesterday. And keeping with that deep dive, I've taken a look at some of the other vague and undisclosed expert testimony, and the things that I'm focusing in, just like I mentioned yesterday on, is the expert testimony that is extremely vague. And by extremely vague, I mean extremely vague, and it doesn't really mention a whole lot. But it was interesting enough for the defense to put it in their filing and ask for more information. And one of them kind of sticks out to me a little bit now that I've done a little bit of research on it. And it looks to me like, watching the progression of it, the defense has backed off on wanting more information about what they're going to testify to. And it looks like they're believing that it's going to be a benign testimony by this particular expert. And I would like to caution them in looking at this particular situation. Because after looking into a lot of what I've looked into about this specific individual, there are some anomalies and some red flags. Now, normally, I don't like to do a video unless I have at the very least, a hypothesis of what it means. This one's a little bit different. I don't know what it means, but it's not adding up. And anything that's not adding up, I think great attention needs to be put to it by the defense if it's not being put to it now. And you'll understand why I say that by the end of this video, I'm hoping. But this particular expert, his name is Eric Seat. Now, Eric Seat, after doing some research, is part of the Idaho State Police Crime Lab team. He's a technician. And in the expert disclosures, there are a lot of Idaho State Police lab technicians that are going to be testifying as expert witnesses in the case. They listed, I believe, 10 or 12 of them. Well, him being one. But what's interesting is most of them are listed together, kind of in a group of what they'll be testifying to. And there's only a couple of them that are really singled out. One of them, of course, is Rylene Nolan, which we've done, a lot of information, a lot of investigating, and uncovered a lot about her. But the other one was this Eric Seat. So I dove in a little bit deeper on Eric Seat, and I found some things that might be interesting and some things that tell me that the defense needs to really look out for this guy. So before I go into all the things that I've discovered, first let's take a look at the defense's initial filing on the vague and undisclosed expert testimony as it relates to Eric Seat and what he specifically was responsible for testifying to. And then we'll kind of look at the progression on that, and I'll show you where it looks like the defense kind of backed off because they didn't bring it up in the limine hearing. So first let's do that, and then I'll get into a little bit more information. Okay, so you'll see in the original motion in limine filing by the defense for the vague and undisclosed expert testimony, when we get to number 8 here, S22 is expert Eric Seat. And it says the expert opinion of this DNA technician provides an explanation of possible testimony regarding a methodology for DNA testing, YSTR. And this is the only time I've ever seen YSTR testing come up in anything in this case, which makes it kind of anomalous to begin with. for which the defense has received no discovery or indication that the method has been used in this case. And yeah, so they're looking at the same thing. We ain't ever seen YSTR either. There is no opinion disclosed other than because of the large volume of discovery, the state directs the defense to summary reports of the expert's ultimate conclusions, which can be found in Lab Report 3. Lab Report 3, Bates 5721-5731, is DNA data of an alternate suspect. So there's red flag number 2, DNA data of an alternate suspect. And I opined before that this was that cigarette that law enforcement got from an individual and conducted probably a YSTR sample, and then they probably compared it to the DNA on the knife sheath and it didn't match. Now, did they compare it to the DNA on the handrail or in the glove? I don't know. So that's where the defense needs to be on red alert. Testimony through this witness, other than relating to an alternate perpetrator, must be prohibited pursuant to Idaho Criminal Rule 16. So it's interesting. You know, they put him in there specifically, separate from everybody else. He did a test that doesn't comply with any other testing done in the case. He's the only one that has ever been said to have worked on anything of an alternate suspect. And you can bet an alternate suspect, I mean, that's not saying, you know, an alternate person of interest or an alternate, you know, somebody that we were looking to exclude. This actually says alternate suspect. That means this is somebody that they were thinking was a suspect in the crime. So that's kind of big. And, you know, I can't help but think that this possibly could have been kohberger right here. But it's just interesting because they don't give any specifics about what he's going to testify to. They put him in there separate. He's the only one that's dealing with an alternate suspect, and he's the only one that did any kind of DNA testing that's different from all the other testing in the case. And he's a member of the Idaho State Police Crime Lab, along with Rylene Nolan and all these other people. So as you can see, S15 to S25, those are all Idaho State Laboratory expert witnesses that are going to be testifying. So they put 10 of them in right here in a group, didn't name them, but then they separate Rylene Nolan and Eric Seat. So that's just kind of interesting in itself. And then we go to the state's response. And in the state's response, you know, they kind of spell out the names of a lot of these 10 Idaho State lab witnesses. Karen White, Taylor Myshek. That's one I want you to remember as well. Tara Martinez, Jade Miller, Ann Nord, Tina Walthall, Stephanie Wilt, and Haley Youngling. Now, that's not 10. I don't know why they listed them specifically and not the rest. But remember Taylor Myshek, and you see how they group all these people in this one argument. But when we go to Eric Seat, it's separate. And the state says the state filed an expert disclosure for Mr. Seat on December 18, 2024, in accordance with the court's guidance on January 23, 2025. The state filed an amended disclosure for Mr. Seat on March 3rd. That disclosure addresses the concerns, i.e. YSTR testing, raised by the defendant in the motion. So what additional disclosure did they give the defense? And was it really what this guy's going to be testifying to? Well, when we go to the final response from the defense, we see that, where is Mr. Seat? Here we go, Seat. The final statement from the defense was, this witness works for the Idaho State Police Crime Laboratory. This disclosure referred to Lab Report 3 and listed topics to discuss. And then the supplemental disclosure that the prosecution filed on March 3rd, this disclosure does not list additional lab reports, but contains more detail about the process of DNA work. And they say as long as this witness does not testify outside of these disclosures, Mr. Kohberger is advised. Well, that looks like the defense maybe looked at it and backed off and thought it was benign, but I think they need to keep their eyes out for what this guy may testify to when they get to trial and don't get blindsided by him. Now, I know the defense team is sharp as a tack, and they seem to have thought out just about anything they can think out in advance in this case. However, just in the abundance of caution, I think they should keep their eyes open for any possible shenanigans from this Mr. Eric Seat. And the reason that I say that, like I said, normally in these videos, I've come to some type of conclusion, but in this one, I just, as much as I look into it, I just don't have enough information to figure out why that my hackles are up, but I know that my hackles are up about it for some reason. And I looked at a few things about Mr. Seat that tells me that, I mean, it's quite possible he could be one of those that will go in and do what he's told to do in a situation. And maybe he's not, maybe I'm reading him wrong, but I'll give you what I've dug up on him, and I'll show you why my hackles are up. And I think the defense's hackles should be up too. The first thing I found was this Idaho State Police Forensic Services validation form. And it says initial validation approval, section 1. And this was on April 15th, 2022, or 27th, 2022, whichever, not long before, before the atrocity. And it's not just a validation approval. It actually is a requester discipline. So, and I'm not 1,000% sure that this requester discipline doesn't mean it's a required thing for these analysts to take as far as coursework. Normally, if I see a report like this, though, and it says discipline, it's a disciplinary report, meaning they did something wrong and they're having to go back and retake courses to make up for something. And the red flag for me is the person who's listed under discipline is Taylor Myshak, DNA biology. And I told you to remember that name just a minute ago. And then it says the primary staff that is involved in this disciplinary, if it is disciplinary, is Promega Corporation, Taylor Myshak, Eric Seat, other DNA analysts is needed. So specifically Eric Seat and Taylor Myshak. So if this is some type of disciplinary report, then that means that they did something wrong. And this was in April of 2022. There's red flag number 1. All right, red flag number 2 was he left Sorensen Forensics as a DNA analyst in Utah in September of 2019, is with them for almost 4 years. And that's when he went to the Idaho State Police in September of 2019. And then he's been there till this day, which is almost 6 years. And that's not a red flag. That's just a history. But forensic analysts connect evidence to Ewing. And you can see this is April 19th, 2022. And this is around the same time of that disciplinary report, remember? And I see this in a court hearing, evidence and testimony connect Dimitri Ewing to a scene of a shooting after a forensic analyst share findings on evidence from the case. So he actually does the DNA evidence on the case, and if I'd have read this 2 years ago, I wouldn't have had a clue that there was an anomaly, but knowing everything that I know now about DNA and likelihood ratios, when I read this, I thought it was interesting. And remember, this is in 2022. And it says, Eric Seat, a DNA analyst for the Idaho State Police Forensic Lab, testified on DNA samples found on zip ties at the crime scene and compared it to a sample provided by Ewing. His analysis concluded that Dimitri Ewing was 23,500 times more likely to be a contributor to the DNA sample than a random individual from the random population. 23,500 times? I mean, this is 2022, y'all. So I mean, is this they're going to convict this Dimitri Ewing based off of 23,500 times? Are you serious? And then he also concluded that Clyde Ewing's DNA was inconclusive as a contributor to the sample, including the DNA of Johns and Patricia Lombard, who was also present at the shooting. The evidence had 3 different individuals' DNA on the sample. So he's doing the inconclusive stuff here, but 23,500 times, I mean, based on what we've been talking about here lately, that wouldn't even qualify him as a match. I mean, that should be inconclusive. So that is a big time red flag for me right there. And then look what this says. Defense attorney Greg Roush objected to Seat's testimony as an expert, citing lack of training and experience, as well as knowledge of other DNA statistical analysis methods. The jury was cleared during this objection, and Seat answered questions from Roush. Chief Deputy Prosecutor April Smith argued that Seat is qualified at the Idaho State Police Forensic Lab and uses software that is considered a standard in the scientific community. Second District Judge Jay Gaskell agreed with the prosecution and allowed his testimony. So the defense attorney was questioning that, if he was even qualified to be an expert. We know he just went through that disciplinary training, and he's concluding that 23,500 times more likely. I'm not even going to look and see if this was a conviction, because if it was, it's kind of scary. But that was another red flag. And then the last red flag is really more of a superstitious red flag, I'll tell you, but it has other implications as well. You can see in, again, April 26th of 2022, all this happened around April that I'm talking about, because that was the time of his disciplinary action. The jury trial begins for former Lewiston representative charged with a bad thing. So why does this really pique my interest? Because anytime that I see a representative, a senator, anybody in politics that's charged with this thing right here, my hackles go up just a little bit, because although most of the time these guys are POS pervs, there is occasions where they will be set up by people to take a fall for things like this, because they won't do certain things for those same people. If somebody in power wants him to do something and he's got some integrity and says no, well, they will go through this type of process to set him up. And if he doesn't get convicted, which I don't know if he did or not, then they've got him pretty much in their back pocket from there. So that's always a little bit of a red flag. And just in case that's the case, I look at the people involved in trying to prosecute him, because that would tell you who's doing what they're told. And this is the last thing I'm going to mention about it. It's just kind of interesting. During opening statements, Deputy Prosecuting Attorney Caitlin Farley told the jury the case is about power, giving Von Englinger's status as a legislature at the time of the alleged assault. Now, Farley said the state expert to call Doe as a witness during Wednesday's court proceedings. Farley also called Eric Seat, a forensic scientist with the Idaho State Police Forensic Services, to confirm the DNA swab from Doe's stomach matched Von Ellinger, who she said something on her stomach during the alleged assault. So the main person testifying to the match was Eric Seat. Was this guy just a regular old perv, or was this a setup, and was he following instructions on what to do? And did Farley have anything to do with it? Just red flags. Now I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, now Pavarotti, that is a conspiracy theory from another planet, because you have absolutely no proof that prosecuting attorney, just because her name was Farley, working with Eric Seat, was really trying to pull a power move against that, elected official as retaliation for not doing underhanded things for powerful people. And you would be correct. That is a huge conspiracy theory on my part. Except for one thing. After doing a little research, I found an obscure comment made about that Miss Farley that gave me further reason to have my hackles up about that situation. And this was from this year, and you can see right here it says 208 corruption. Ada County prosecutor Caitlin Farley could face serious charges for malicious prosecution, evidence tampering, amongst a laundry list of other criminal charges with cases she worked directly with the disgraced sheriff, Deputy Neil Edward Daigle, who has already been moved to the jail and is no longer a detective. Her unethical methods and behavior has put many innocent lives behind bars and or on probation with a life-altering criminal. And I didn't read the rest of it, but I really didn't need to. So, yeah, my hackles are up on Eric Seat after seeing this. Now, I'm not saying that Eric Seat is somebody that would go in and do what he was told by powerful people in a case, but looking at what we just looked at, it kind of seems like if there was somebody that was like that, he would be a candidate for it anyways. And I certainly believe, after looking at everything I've looked at on this particular subject, that the defense should have their hackles up and keep a close eye on what's going to happen with the testimony of Eric Seat, and not just take the prosecution's vague and undisclosed word for it. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, well, Pavarotti, the defense doesn't listen to you, and you are probably right. I would never be so conceited to even think that the defense of Bryan Kohberger would ever even bat an eyebrow at old Pavarotti. But there are some really key takeaways in this thing. But the first thing I've got to mention is the message that was clearly sent out to Pavarotti by Ann Taylor in this trial, in this hearing, excuse me. And if y'all watched all 7 hours of it, I'm sure you would have noticed it. But if you didn't, that's okay. That's why you got me to surmise the 7-hour trial. But I'm going to start with the message she sent directly to Pavarotti. And I heard the message loud and clear, and I will keep up the good fight. Now, Pavarotti's not even on Facebook or Twitter or any other social media. I do my YouTube videos. So it was interesting when, during the slide presentation, just to give you a little background on where this took place. All right, so she's got Dr. Edelman on the stand. Dr. Edelman, while he's on the stand, apparently his eyes aren't that good, so he has paper copies of a PowerPoint presentation that he had prepared. And he had paper copies because his eyes wouldn't allow him to see the PowerPoint. So he had to put on his reading glasses and look at the PowerPoint, or maybe he had contacts in. I don't remember him putting on reading glasses. But he had to have copies of his PowerPoint slides in front of him at the witness stand so he could discuss what was on the screen. Because of that, Ann Taylor actually worked the laptop for the PowerPoint presentation for Dr. Edelman. So she has full control of this laptop and what goes on the screen, how long it's on the screen, and everything in that manner. Well, during the PowerPoint presentation, there came a section on social media. And they specifically went to Facebook to show some of the Facebook groups that were created from this case. And as she's scrolling through there, the message was read loud and clear because she clearly was letting people know, including myself, that she is absolutely listening to Pavarotti and wants that out there front and center. Because although Pavarotti's not on Facebook, apparently my videos are. Apparently people will get them and repost them on Facebook somehow. I didn't even know they did that. So I'm going to show you a clip from this portion of it where she is showing clearly me. And when you think about all the personalities that's out there and all the videos and all of the content, the fact that in this little short clip she shows 3 prominent videos for me, I'm taking it as a direct message to me. Take it how you like. But I can also say this, as she's doing this, the judge gets mad. He stops the entire hearing to get it off the screen because he doesn't want anybody to see it. And then they had to take about an hour recess as they discussed off camera what Ann Taylor had just done. So it was a significant move on her part, and I appreciate it. And thank you, Ann. We will keep up the good fight. Message heard loud and clear. Take a listen.
So from my experience, you have a lot of information disseminated through informal communication channels and through social media in high-profile cases.
Did you find that in this case?
I did. There was quite a bit.
Now remember, Ann Taylor is working the computer. So this little strip of social media from Facebook, she's controlling the flow on it.
What are we seeing on this slide?
So this is just an example. I went on Facebook and just did one search, which was just the search term was Moscow murders to see what would come up. And this is what we would call a results page, essentially. So if you hit play, you can see the extent of content that's out there from groups that are just talking about this case and sharing information and discussing what they think happened, and videos and posts, which may include anything from influencers and podcasters to sharing traditional news stories.
And there you have it, folks. You see that right there? That's the little movie that I made called Pavarotti's Moscow Murders. And they prominently highlighted, I don't know how it gets on Facebook. I guess this gentleman here reposted it. But of all the videos and all the social media that they could show on here, they choose to show this. It's a message. That was a pretty good video too, by the way. If y'all haven't seen it, go back in my queue and watch that one.
Through local newspapers or television stories, but there's quite a bit. Again, this is just one search.
Just one search. Now look at Ann. She's scrolling through here. She's wanting to show some of this stuff. Oh my goodness! And there it is again. There's my Sunday night special, the AB Connection. That was a really good video. If you haven't seen that one, you could go back and watch it.
You did a screen capture so that you could show the results from one search term.
Yes.
Look how
this is me just scrolling through the search engine results page from that one search term.
Yep. Look how she's going through it kind of quick.
And then if you click on the tabs like posts or groups, you would see other categories. What's remarkable is the number of groups that have been created discussing this case. Some of them local, some of them national, with, some of them have hundreds or thousands of members, others have hundreds of thousands of members. So this case has captured the public's attention.
We'll just keep scrolling for a minute. I think this goes on a little bit.
Sure, these are all groups that you're looking at right now. So they're just Facebook groups that have been created talking about this.
Oh, look where she stops. Who's the man at the top of the screen? Well, it's old Pavarotti again. So like I said, it would be absolutely ludicrous to think that Ann Taylor or the defense team in this major case would pay attention to my little YouTube channel. But just in case that they do, you need to pay close attention to the testimony of Eric Seat. Don't overlook it. Please like and subscribe to the channel, post your comments, thoughts, criticisms, and until next time, Pavarotti's out.